Three warriors enter the same battlefield. A Viking with a round shield, a samurai with a curved blade, a knight wrapped in steel. For centuries, people have argued over who was the deadliest warrior in history, but most of those arguments are built on fantasy. The Viking was not a giant monster. The samurai was not a magic swordsman. And the knight was not a slow man trapped inside useless armor. So if we remove the myths and force them into one final duel, who actually survives? To answer this, we cannot ask who looks cooler. We have to ask a colder question. Whose world created the better killing machine? The Viking came from the cold edge of Scandinavia, a world of raids, ships, trade, farming, and sudden violence. The samurai rose from Japan's warrior class, shaped by discipline, loyalty, status, and civil war. The knight came from medieval Europe, a world where land, faith, horses, armor, and war became one brutal system. Each of them was dangerous, but they were dangerous in different ways. One relied on pressure, one relied on precision, one relied on protection and impact, and that difference decides everything. The Viking's greatest weapon was not rage, it was the shield. The fantasy version gives him a giant axe, a wild scream, and no fear. The real Viking was more practical than that. He could be a farmer, trader, sailor, raider, and fighter, depending on the season. His world rewarded men who could move fast, strike hard, and survive long enough to bring something home. His equipment depended on wealth. A rich Viking might carry a sword, expensive, rare, and a symbol of status. A poorer warrior might fight with a spear or axe. But almost every serious Viking fighter understood the value of the round shield. It was light, it was mobile, and in close combat, it was terrifying. A shield is not just defense. It can blind your opponent, trap his weapon, break his balance, smash into his face, and turn a clean duel into chaos. That is the Viking's path to victory. He does not need the perfect strike. He needs to close distance, disrupt rhythm, and make the fight ugly. Against a samurai, this is dangerous. Against a knight, it is still dangerous. But the Viking has one major problem: protection. Mail armor existed, but it was expensive. Helmets existed, but not every man had one. A Viking could be deadly, but compared to the knight, he was usually more exposed. So his fight has to end early. If the duel becomes long, his chances begin to bleed away. The samurai may be the most romanticized warrior in this duel. One man, one blade, one perfect cut. But history is more complicated. The samurai was not only a swordsman. For much of Japanese history, elite warriors were deeply connected to mounted archery. The bow mattered, the horse mattered. Later, spears, naginata, and even firearms became part of the samurai world. The katana became the symbol, but the samurai was bigger than the katana. His armor was also misunderstood. Lacquered plates of iron or leather tied together with cords created flexible protection. The helmet, mask, and crests were not just beautiful, they were psychological weapons. A samurai could look like a demon before the first strike was even thrown. And that matters. Fear is part of combat. But in this duel, the samurai faces a brutal problem. He usually does not carry a shield. That means he must trust timing, movement, armor, and weapon control. Against a lightly armored opponent, a sharp curved blade is horrifying. A clean cut can end a fight instantly. But against heavy mail or plate, cutting becomes less reliable. Metal changes the rules. A slash that would open flesh may slide, bite shallow, or fail to reach the body beneath. So the samurai's path to victory is not raw power. It is precision. Hands, neck, armpits, behind the knee, the face. He has to find the gaps. He has to solve the armor. And that makes him dangerous, but also vulnerable. Because precision needs time. And in this duel, time may be the one thing he does not have. The medieval knight was not just a warrior. He was an investment. The horse was expensive. The armor was expensive. The weapons were expensive. The training was expensive. Behind him stood land, status, inheritance, religion, and war. He was not designed for survival alone. He was designed for dominance. And the biggest myth about the knight is that armor made him slow and helpless. Good armor did not turn a man into a statue. It was built for movement. A trained knight could mount a horse, fight on foot, wrestle, strike, defend, and keep going. The armor distributed weight across the body. It protected the places where one mistake meant death. And unlike the Viking or samurai, the knight was especially familiar with fighting armored enemies. That matters, because armored combat is not just sword fighting, it is leverage, grappling, half-swording, daggers into weak points, maces and axes against protection. The knight understood that sometimes you do not cut through armor, you control the man inside it. Then you finish him. On horseback, the knight becomes even more dangerous. A trained warrior in armor with a lance riding into impact is not just a fighter. He is a collision. The Viking may be fearless. The samurai may be disciplined. But neither wants to receive a full mounted charge from a medieval knight. That is not a fair duel. That is physics wearing steel. But here is where the easy answer becomes too simple, because if the knight keeps the horse, the fight is almost decided. So take the horse away. No charge, no open field, no lance impact. Just 3 men on the ground, rein under their boots, steel in their hands. Now, the Viking's shield matters more. The samurai's precision matters more. The knight's armor matters more. And the question becomes much harder. Who wins when the battlefield shrinks? On foot, the Viking is more dangerous than people think, especially against the samurai. The samurai wants clean timing. The Viking wants to destroy timing. The samurai wants angles. The Viking wants pressure. The samurai wants distance. The Viking wants collision. That round shield could ruin the rhythm of a blade-focused fighter. It could crash forward, hide an attack, and force the samurai to fight in a dirtier, closer range than he wants. If the Viking gets close enough, the fight becomes ugly, fast. But the samurai can absolutely win. If he keeps distance, if he targets exposed limbs, if he uses superior timing, one precise cut or thrust could end it. That duel is not rage versus discipline. It is pressure versus precision. Now put the samurai against the knight. This is the hardest matchup for him. The samurai's blade is dangerous. His timing is dangerous. His discipline is dangerous. But the knight's armor is built to reduce exactly that kind of danger. A clean slash is not enough. The samurai has to target gaps, but the knight also knows gaps. He knows how armor works because his own life depends on it. If the fight becomes close, the knight can grapple. He can use weight. He can use protected hands. He can turn sword fighting into wrestling with blades. And once that happens, the samurai is in serious trouble. Now the Viking against the knight. This is the most violent fight. The Viking's shield gives him a real chance. A hard shield bash can break balance. An axe can hook. A spear can control distance. And if the Viking lands early, even the knight can fall. But the longer it goes, the more the knight benefits. Better armor, better protection, more experience against armored opponents, more ways to survive mistakes. The Viking needs chaos. The knight can survive chaos. And that is the difference. So who wins the ultimate duel? On horseback, the answer is clear: the knight. His horse, lance, armor, and training give him the strongest advantage. On foot, the fight becomes closer. The Viking becomes a nightmare at close range. The samurai becomes deadly if he finds the right opening. But if we are choosing the most likely survivor overall, the winner is still the medieval knight. Not because he was braver, not because Europe was superior, not because the Viking or samurai were weak. The knight wins because his entire system was built around protection, impact, and fighting dangerous men in armor. He had the best combination of defense, weapons, mounted power, and elite combat training for this specific matchup. The Viking was the most chaotic. The samurai was the most precise. But the knight was the most complete. And in a duel where one mistake means death, the man who can survive the first mistake has the greatest advantage. But maybe the real lesson is not who wins. Maybe the real lesson is that every warrior is a mirror of the world that created him. The Viking was shaped by cold seas, raids, trade, and survival. The samurai was shaped by loyalty, status, civil war, and discipline. The knight was shaped by land, steel, horses, faith, and power. They were not superheroes. They were answers. Different civilizations answering the same brutal question: how does a man survive when history demands blood? And that is why this debate never dies. Because, deep down, we are not only asking who would win, we are asking which world created the deadliest warrior. If you want history told like a dark documentary, subscribe to Anime History. And now I want your verdict. Knight, samurai, or Viking? Who survives the final duel?